today's lesson is on the quadratic formula. All right, go ahead and write down the quadratic formula at the top of your paper. We say opposite of b, and we'll talk about what that means in a minute. Opposite of b, plus or minus square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so go ahead and write down the formula. That's what we're going to be using today. Quadratic formula. And it's how you can solve any quadratic. This formula works for any quadratic. What makes something a quadratic? What does that have to have in it? X to the, x squared. Okay, so to be a quadratic, it has to have x squared in it, and this formula always works. Okay? All right, so the first thing you have to do on number 1 is get everything on the same side. Get everything on one side. That's what you have to do first. What should we move? The 28. And when you move it over here, it was positive, but it's crossing the equals. It's going to be negative. So we got x squared minus 12x minus 28. So that's your first step, is to get it all on one side, all together. X squared minus 12x minus 28. All right, this is your A, B, and C. A is 1. A is not x squared. So A, B, and C are numbers. So in this case, A is 1. What is B? Negative 12, and C is negative 28. Okay? And we're going to plug them into the formula. So you start with the opposite of B. So here's what I mean. It was negative 12, so it becomes positive 12. Then you put a plus or a minus, and we'll talk about what that means in a minute. Put plus or minus. You put a square root. And actually, I think this might be helpful. Let's go back up to the formula and put parentheses right here, because a lot of people, the calculator, remember, will give you the wrong answer if you don't put parentheses right there. So you might want to add parentheses into your formula. So you have to do parentheses, and you put your b inside of it. B is negative 12. And then you put a square. Minus 4. I'm just writing it straight from the formula, guys. Minus 4 times A. What is A? 1. And then times C, which is 28. All over 2. And you can, some of y'all can skip this step going forward, but for this first problem, I'm going to write it. It's 2 times A, which in this case, A is 1, so I'm going to write it out. You know 2 times 1 is 2, so you don't have to write it like that. You could just put a 2.
So when you plug in B, what it originally was when you switched the 28 to the other side, that'll like what you plug in B, like since it was negative 12, now it'll stay negative 12.
Okay, so two answers to your question. We had to move the 28. The 28 is your C, okay? And so in the formula, guys, look up here. This is a really good question. For this first spot, you do the opposite of B. So B was negative 12, so we wrote positive 12. But in this one, you don't do the opposite of it, okay? And it actually, you'll end up getting the right answer whether you do or not, so it's not that big of a deal. But for this one, technically, it's not the opposite of it. It stays negative 12 there. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. What I want you to do next is please get out your calculator. Please get out your calculator. All right, guys, watch what I'm going to type in. You can't type in the whole thing at once. You can't type in the whole thing. Start with what's underneath the square root. So negative 12 in parentheses. So parentheses negative 12 squared minus 4 parentheses 1 parentheses negative 28. So you type in just what's underneath the square root. Type in just what's underneath the square root, and you press enter. Okay, and so we have to write that as our next step. So I'm going to put equals. I'm bringing over the 12. I'm bringing over the plus or minus. I still have a square root. But instead of writing all that stuff, what did we simplify that down to? 256. And then we'll just put all over 2. We won't write the 1 again. So you type in everything that's under the square root and you put 256 there, okay? All right, the next thing you can check is if 256 is a perfect square. Here's how you can check that. You hit second on your calculator, you hit second, and then you hit the square root button. It's next to the x squared, and then you type in 256 and you see if it's perfect. It is. What does it give you? 16. Okay, so here's how I'm going to write the next step. 12 plus or minus. I'm not going to write the square root anymore because I typed this into the calculator. The square root of 256 is 16 over 2. Okay. All right. We are about done. We have to do 12 plus 16 and divide that by 2. Watch how I'm going to do that in the calculator. 12 plus 16, I'm going to press enter, and then I'm going to divide by 2. 12 plus 16, press enter, divide by 2. So one answer you get is 14. That's one of your answers. One of your answers is 14. And then you do 12 minus 16. That's what the plus or minus means. Sorry, type that in wrong. Minus 16. You have to do one time, you have to do it with the plus. The next time you have to do it with a minus. Okay, so you do 12 minus 16, press enter, and then you divide it by 2. What do you get? Negative 2. Okay. Guys, I know that's a lot of steps, but it's straightforward. You don't have to do a lot of thinking. You just have to take it one step at a time. Okay? So your two answers are 14 and negative 2. Okay? All right, let's do another one. Number 2. Is everything already on one side? Okay, so we have A, B, and C. We have A, B, and C. What's my A value on this one? 1. 1. Okay, my A value is 1. So I've got A, B, and C. All right, we're going to plug it into the formula. So I'll start with the opposite of B. So it's positive 22, so I write down negative 22 plus or minus square root. What comes next? Parentheses what? What goes in the parentheses? B, which is 22 squared. What do I write next? Minus 4. And then I have to multiply that by A, which is 1, and C, which is 21. All over. I'm just going to put, well, no, I'm not. Let me just go ahead and write it out for people who are visual learners. It's 2 times A, which A is 1. Some of y'all know 2 times 1 is 2. And so you don't have to write, you don't have to do the extra parentheses. Okay? All right. I'm ready for my calculator. I start with parentheses 22 squared. Parentheses 22 squared minus 4 times 1 times 121. Okay. What are y'all getting? 0. Okay. So I'm going to drop down the negative 22. We haven't done anything with that yet. I'm going to drop down the negative 22. I'm going to drop down the plus or minus. And then I'm going to put the square root of 0 all over 2. Okay? So everything underneath the square root gives me 0. What do you think the square root of 0 is? 0. Okay, the square root of 0, 0. Some of y'all can skip this step, but I'm going to write it out for now. Negative 22 plus or minus 0 over 2. Okay. All right. This is where I do the plus and minus thing. So start with the plus. What's negative 22 plus 0? Negative 22, and then you divide it by 2. What does that give you? Negative 11. That's one answer. Then you do negative 22 minus 0, which is negative 22 divided by 2, which is negative 11. So how many answers does this one have? 1. Okay. We're going to talk more about this tomorrow, but the first problem, what do we get? We got 14 and negative 2. That means the graph crosses at 14 and at 2. This one means the graph, you go to negative 11, it only crosses once at negative 11. Okay? All right. Number three, what do I have to do first? Move everything to one side. I like to move everything to the left is how I do it. Okay, so it's going to be 2x squared minus 4x or plus 4x? Very good. Plus 4x. Guys, when it crosses the equals, it changes signs, and then minus 5. So those two change their signs. So I do A, B, and C. All right, opposite of positive 4, negative 4, plus or minus square root. B squared, so that would be 4 squared, minus 4A, what is A? 2, and C, negative 5, all over 2A, so that'd be 2 times 2. All right, I'll give people a second to write it down. Once you have it written down, the next step is to go to your calculator. Okay, start with parentheses 4. Start with parentheses 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 5. What do y'all have? 56. Okay. So I'm going to write negative 4 plus or minus, so I'm just copying it over, negative 4 plus or minus the square root. What goes inside the square root? 56. All over 2 times 2, 4. Okay. All right, the next thing you can do is you can check 56. So I would do the second square root 56. And is it perfect? No. This one, you have to do the breakdown step, okay? You have to do the breakdown step. Two things that multiply to give you 56. 7 and 8. I don't break down 7 anymore, but 8 breaks down to 4 and 2, and then 4 breaks down to 2 and 2. And I'm going to cross out the ones that I broke down. All right, what do I circle? I circle the 2's. I circle the 2's. All right, so guys, watch how this works. So I have this negative 4, I'm going to drop it down. So I have negative 4. I'm dropping down the plus minus. What goes outside of the square root now? A 2. I circled. Whatever you circled goes outside the square root. And what's left over? 7 and 2. What do you do with those? Very good. Multiply them back. 7 times 2 is 14 all over 4. Okay. The last thing is that these 3 numbers can all be reduced. 4, 2, and 4 can all reduce by 2. Okay. Let's see if I make that a little darker. All right, so negative 4 when you reduce it by 2 becomes negative 2. 2 when you reduce it by 2 is 1. You leave the 14 alone because it's an any, and these other numbers are outies. So you leave the 14 alone, and then 4 when you reduce it by 2 is 2. That's the answer that you would find. You don't have to do the plus minus on this one because you have a square root left in your answer. That's what it'll look like on the test. It'll be multiple choice, and that's what it would look like, the answer, okay, on the final exam, okay? All right, here we go. Number 4, what do I need to do first? Good, move the 13 over, it becomes positive, okay? Then what do I do? What do I do next? Put it into the formula. So opposite of B, Would be positive 4, good. Plus or minus square root. Negative 4 squared minus 4 times what? 1 times 13 all over 2 times 1. All right, then I would type some stuff in my calculator, whatever's under the square root. Anybody already got that?
Yeah.
Negative 36, okay. And 2 times 1 is 2, okay. Okay, whenever there's a negative under the square root, pop out a I, okay? So you can check 36, but guys, don't type in negative 36, because if you type in negative 36, it says a non-real answer, because it is imaginary, okay? So just type in square root of 36, and you get 6, okay? But we have to put a what with it? I, okay? All right, so it's going to be 4 plus or minus 6i over 2. 4 plus or minus 6i. 4 plus or minus 6i over 2. Any questions about where the 6i came from? Okay, your last step is you can divide everything by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 3 divided by 2 is, 6 divided by 2 is 3, and you put the I with it. That's your answer. Since it has an I in it, you can't do the plus or minus thing either. That's your answer. 2 plus or minus 3i. Okay. All right, here we go. Number 5, what do I do first? All right, move the 4, so 4 becomes negative 4 because you're moving it over. A, B, C. All right. All right, opposite of B, so that'd be negative 3 plus or minus square root. What goes in the parentheses? 3 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1. A is 1. C is negative 4 all over 2 times 1. All right, what do you get when you put that one in the calculator?
25.
All right, so type in the calculator, you get 25, okay? All right, tell me about the square root of 25. It's 5, so I write negative 3 plus or minus 5 over 2. Okay. Square root of 25 is 5. Does this one have any i's or square roots in it?
No.
So this is where you do the plus or minus thing. Okay, so you can use your calculator. You type in negative 3 plus 5 and press enter. Negative 3 plus 5, 2, and then you divide it by 2. What do you get for one of your answers? 1, okay? Then in your calculator, you can do negative 3 minus 5 and press enter. Negative 8 divided by 2, negative 4. Okay, so your 2 answers. All right, number 6. What do you notice about that one? Yep, okay, so here's where you have to be careful. This is A, that is A, but 10 is actually your C. Here's why. Remember, y'all have to write this on your foldable quiz each week? AX squared plus BX plus C.
Yeah.
So A is always with the X squared, B is always with the X, and C is just a number, okay? So this one is missing what? What's it missing?
B.
The B, okay? So you can say that B is 0, so you have to be careful with that. If it's whichever one it's missing is going to be your 0, okay? All right, so opposite of 0 is just 0 plus or minus 0 squared minus 4 times what? 5 and so 4ac all over 2a. Okay. All right, some of y'all are already typing. I appreciate that. Typing in what's under the square root. What do you get for that? What do you get? All right, so square root negative 200 over, what would it be over? 10. Okay. All right, if there's a negative under there, you got to pop out a I, so you know there's going to be an I in there. What about when you type in square root of positive 200? Is it perfect? No. Okay, so we have to break it down. 100 times 2, and then 100 breaks down to, let's do the easy way, 10 times 10. So I can go ahead and circle those. I can do some less work if I do it that way. Okay. All right, what number is going to go outside the square root? The 10. What number is left over? The 2. Okay, and you're going to put a plus or minus with that. What's it all divided by? 10. Okay. All right, your last step is just to divide the outie numbers. You don't divide the any number, just the outie. You just divide 10 divided by 10 is 1. So your answer is going to be plus or minus 1i root 2. And no, you don't have to write that 1. But that would be your answer, plus or minus 1i root 2. Okay? All right, let's see what it looks like in a multiple choice question. So I have A, B, and C. How does the formula start? Opposite of B. What is my B right now? -5. -5. So it's going to change to +5. So I can go ahead and mark out some answers. I can mark out A, D, and E because -5 has to change to +5. Okay? So I know that. So it's 5 plus or minus square root -5 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1. And what do I already know is going to be on the bottom? 2. Where did they get 6 from?
3 times 2.
Very good. Okay. All right. So type in what's underneath your square root. Somebody? 13? Okay. So the answer is C. You get 13. Okay. Y'all should be writing all this down. I see some of y'all not taking notes. A couple people. Okay. All right. Flip it over. We got 2 more left. Number 8. What are the values of A, B, and C in the original quadratic equation? Okay. The easiest one to start with is right here. What is the first number in the formula? A, B, or C? In the formula. B. This is the opposite of B. It's the opposite of B. So if this is -12, what did it originally have to be? 12. +12. So B is +12. B is +12. Okay. Yes. Yes. That to get A? Yeah. Okay. So yes, you are exactly right. So this is the opposite of B. So that's how we got B. Then we're going to move to the bottom. The bottom is 2 times, well, what's the formula? 2 times A to give you -6. What does A have to be? What do you multiply 2 by to get -6? -3. So A is -3 because 2 times -3 would give you -6. Okay? All right. We know 24 equals b squared minus 4ac. 24 is underneath the square root, and we know underneath the square root is b squared minus 4ac. Do we already know what b is?
Yeah.
Yeah, b is 12. What is 12 squared? 144. You can type that in your calculator if you need to. Minus 4. And do we already know what a is?
Yeah.
What's a?
-3.
-3. And we're still trying to figure out what c is. Okay, so that's how I'm going to set it up. 24 equals 144 minus 4 times -3. All right, I'm going to simplify that a little more. So I'm dropping down the 24, dropping down the equals, dropping down the 144. What's -4 times -3? Yep. There's a 12. Okay, I need to solve that for c, which means I need to get c by itself. What number would I move first? Very good, 144, and I would subtract it. Somebody type that in their calculator for me. What is it? Okay. And then divide both sides by 12. C is -10. Okay. All right, last one. 3x squared minus 8x equals -2. What do I do first? Move the 2, so it becomes +2. And this is my A, B, and C. Okay, let's put it into the formula. Opposite of -8, +8, plus or minus square root, b squared, so that'd be -8 squared, minus 4 times 3 times 2, 4ac, all over
6.
Good. I wrote that. 2 times 3, which is 6. Yes, you may go ahead and write 6. You're absolutely welcome to do that. Okay? All right. Type in your underneath the square root, somebody. Anybody already done it?
40.
What is it? 40. Okay, so square root of 40 over 6. Okay? All right, if you type in the square root of 40 in your calculator, is it perfect?
No.
So you break it down. What multiplies to give you 40?
220.
Yep. We'll do 10 and 4 just because it works out a little bit better, because 4 breaks down to 2. I'm not going to break down 10 on this one because it is 2 and 5, which can't get circled. Okay, so I'll leave it like that. All right, so 8 plus or minus. What goes outside? What goes inside?
40.
10 all over 6. Okay. All right, that doesn't seem to match A, B, or C. Very good. Divide it by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So that can mark out A. It's got to be a 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So is that B or C? C is the one that has a 1 right there. So you got C. Okay. And then, guys, it also says to find the decimal answers. So here's how we're going to do that. So in your calculator, get your calculators out. Type this in with me. It's the last thing. I'm going to type in 8 plus 2 square root 10. I'm going to type in 8 plus 2 square root 10, and I'm going to press enter. And then I'm going to divide that by 6. Okay? What do you get? 2.39. 2.39, so I can mark out all those. It's either got to be D or E. So 2.39 worked. All right, how do I get the other answer? What do you think I type in my calculator? Very good, 8 minus. So you do the plus or minus thing. 8 minus 2 square root 10. Bless you. Press enter and then divide it by 6. 0.28, which is E.